Baba's new life from 16th October 1949 to the conclusion of Manonash in February 1952. This series will continue. I will figure out the scheduling as time goes on, but there are a total of 17 sessions in it. This present session is an overview of the new life, and it will look at the new life as a whole. And the next session, which starts next Monday at 10 in the morning, the next one, which will start next Monday at 10 in the morning. The afternoon, there's a birthday party for Bao, so this will be a morning session then. We'll start to narrate the history of the new life chronologically. It'll actually start next week with early 1949 in the Great Seclusion, and we'll go on from there. As I imagine many of you would already know, the period is about 2.5 years. The formal inauguration of Manonash happened early in the morning at the railway crossing in Ahmednagar. Now it seems to be Ahilya-nagar. You know where the railway station is. I imagine many of you do. There's a level crossing within 200-300 meters of it. There wasn't, of course, that big overpass back in those days, but that's where it started, in that very place. And Baba traveled very widely throughout the course of the new life, and it came to its culmination at Merazad. In what's now talked about as Erich's room, or the Manonash cabin, that whole area was screened off, and Baba did his final work of the Manonash phase there. So we're talking about 2.5 years. It's the new life, even in the context of Baba's very extraordinary life, really does stand out as something unique in a lot of ways. There was a very radical disjuncture when it started that Baba himself caused. Nobody ever thought about the old life under that term, but then Baba began to talk about it as the old life, and what he was inaugurating he called the new life. And he completely severed all connection with the old life. It was the greatest shock his disciples and followers had ever experienced until that time. He sold off his ashram, all the property in his name. His Mehrabad and Merazad were they either sold, I think they were sold, or given away. They were wound up being taken up by Sarosh and Nariman, so they were held by close disciples, old life disciples of Baba's. But Baba said, what you do with them is up to you. You can sell them or do anything you want. Baba severed all connection with his old life disciples and followers. They could have no communication with him. They couldn't see him. Nobody around Baba could even mention their names. You could not talk about old life disciples. Those who were his companions couldn't refer to the old life in any way. And Baba, through much of the new life, parts of it, they lived a gypsy life where they didn't even have any kind of stable quarters at all. But through the greater part of the new life, they had some kind of bungalow, which they got, but they never stayed anywhere for long, a couple months, and then Baba would move on to the next place. This is just the externals of it. The real conditions of it were extraordinarily difficult. And it wasn't the external hardships that were the hardest part of it, although those could be challenging too. But they had to maintain a constant cheerfulness, and never give any expression to anger or anything like that. Be constantly living in the present. It seems to me that that's really one of the great themes of the new life. Is we always talk about live in the present. It's kind of a platitude. Well, in the new life, the past and the future were gone, and they really did it to a most extraordinary extent. Baba characterized it as a life of helplessness and hopelessness. I mean, it sounds like a word you'd use associated with, depression or something like that. But it didn't mean that at all. It means a renunciation of all expectation of all kinds. That's what hope is, right? What is hope? Looking to the future to supply something that you're lacking now. Well, in the new life, there was no allowance for anything like that. What is help? Well, looking for someone to come and help me be out of my predicament. Well, in the new life, I completely accept my current state and don't expect any help at all. Another of the terms Baba used was satyanashi, utter annihilation, utter ruin. So when the Baba catches on, all the advertising agencies will have to somehow learn to make use of these terms. To experience your true satyanashi with this or that. Another term, expression Baba had was the enjoyment of suffering. Now, how can you actually enjoy suffering? There were a whole system. There was a whole system of rules and conditions. In a future session, we'll be looking at some of these. And Baba himself began the new life with an oath. And there was a very, I wish I could think of a better word for it, almost a legalistic aspect to the new life. And in the sense that Baba would always refer back to the conditions and his oath. Repeatedly, Baba held himself to it. He would say, this is a violation of the conditions. And they were all enumerated, as a matter of fact. From time to time, Baba would renew this or give new oaths at various periods connected with the work he was doing. I'm just giving some of the themes of the new life here. Baba, in the early months, enunciated 4 phases of the new life. There was the begging phase. There was the langoti phase. You know what a langoti is? It's a loincloth. A gypsy phase and a labor phase. And there's a lot of history behind all of this. And Baba continued to repeat these as fundamental parts of the new life. As time went on, it's hard to really give an adequate explanation of words of how much happened in the new life. It was tremendously dynamic, and huge changes happened. And my own feeling about this is that the new life itself didn't change, but Baba's work in trying to bring it into actuality went through a great, all these different phases and adjustments and changes that went on. And a lot of it was centered on what I would say is the most striking and, to Baba's followers, shocking aspect of the new life of all of them, which is this, that Baba stepped down from his God state and became an ordinary man. And this isn't something that we attribute to him. He most emphatically said this. And it was really hard to swallow among those who had accepted him as God realized, God in human form. And all of a sudden he wasn't. And he certainly said so and certainly acted that way. There are many among Baba's following who don't believe it, who think that he actually knew he was God the whole time and this was a role he was playing. So you can form your own opinion. But I myself believe him. I think that this was part of his work, was to actually become an ordinary man. So if we look at the new life in in the context of Baba's, I'm using this phrase, his Avataric career. I mean career in the sense of the course of work that he did as Avatar, which really started in January 1922 and ran through the rest of his physical lifetime, certainly. Well, for the new life comes right in the middle, really, little past the center chronologically of his life. But during the first 2.5 decades, quarter century, Baba had not declared himself as Avatar. There were those close to him who recognized him as such, and would even allude to him that way. I think the close disciples understood this, but he was more commonly treated like a Sadguru. We have in India that term, or perfect master. And Baba was always a bit averse to some of the trappings that come along with being a perfect master in India, but it was given to him anyway, garlanding and a certain courtesy and deference and touching feet and a certain kind of language you use when you talk to a master. And Baba tended to discourage that really all along, but a lot of it got attributed to him anyway. Well, with the new life, that was over. Baba would not permit any of that worshipfulness directed towards him at all, because he was an ordinary man. In one respect, Baba did continue to be a master throughout the new life, and that was that he required of his companions complete obedience, instantaneous obedience. But that was the only trapping of masterhood I can see that he kept during the new life. It was that. So it's, in looking in terms of Baba's Avataric career, he renounced or ended that old role of Sadguru as it applied to him. Of course, there are Sadgurus, there are perfect masters, but it ended it with respect to him. And over the first, this is overview now, over the first year of the new life, as in my interpretation of it, Baba's main emphasis was trying to live the new life with the group of companions. In fact, there were 20 who set out with him, 16 men, 4 women. And Kaikabad also joined them. There were other people who came into the picture from time to time. But he really went through actually a training period from October 16th to December 31st, 1949. Baba called it that. That was the training period. And he tried to get them to learn to live the new life in the way that he wanted. And the new life in real earnest began in January 1st, 1950. But when you study the new life closely, Baba was never satisfied with the way the new life was being lived by his companions or by himself, too. He was very critical of himself. He was a man, ordinary man. He was all full of weaknesses. The one of his own weaknesses that he seems to have spoken about the most was losing his temper. He had that Irani, fiery nature. And in the old life, well, this was just the Jalali aspect of a master. It's part of his greatness. But in the new life, it was a fault. And Baba treated it as such. And whenever he would express anger, he would very, very often have companions. They were supposed to call his attention to it and punish him. So sometimes they would twist his ear or give him a slap or kick him or even spit on him. Baba, in his fiery period in the Munsali Meme in Bombay, would hit people or beat up his mandali and all this kind of thing. That doesn't seem to have happened in the new life. It went the other way. Baba had people doing this to him. And so for the whole first half of 1950, Baba was very dissatisfied with himself and very dissatisfied with his companions. This keeps coming up. And part of what he was unhappy with himself about, apart from his anger, was that he kept making allowances for his companions where he should not have done so. He kept indicating that he was violating his oath by countenancing lapses or a falling short where he should have actually kicked them out of the new life. When you violated the conditions of the new life, Baba would kick you out. And a very, touching episode of exactly that kind happened within the first 2 weeks with Dalit Singh. Some of you may know that story. So Baba really meant it. But he kept accommodating in a way that he didn't like. And finally, there was a big adjustment that happened in May, June 1950. We'll go into this when it comes up, where Baba changed the whole arrangement, and his New Life companions became what he called servant companions. And I'm being interpretive here. It looks like to me that the focus changed from that point on. Baba was not really making his big push to get a group of companions to live the new life. Of course, they had to. The conditions bore on him. But rather, he was taking it on himself. He was doing it himself in his own way. And there was a very great meeting on the 16th of October, 1950. Baba, and here's another feature of the new life, calendars and timelines. Baba kept drawing up these timelines, and he stuck to them. So thus, October 16th of each year was a major year in the new life, and he would want to complete this by such and such a date, and he would do it. He really would do it. So he had a meeting on the 16th of October, 1950, where he stepped back into the old life for 4 hours. And he invited about 200 of his Indian old life followers to attend this meeting in Mahabaleshwar. I don't know, have any of you been to Mahabaleshwar? Yeah, it's up this mountainous area. 3, 4, 5, 6,000-foot mountains south of here. And he stepped back into the old life, and it was a really, really memorable event. The old life people who came to it were absolutely startled that they were being given this chance to meet with Baba again. They thought they would never see him again in their life. That was the spirit in which Baba introduced the new life. But from that time on, it looks to me like Baba was working toward Manonash. He hadn't introduced the word Manonash yet, but there are a lot of indications that that's what he was doing. So the first part of it after that was working with the musts and the poor people. Very beautiful and famous stories about that. In 1951, Baba carried out what is called the 100-day seclusion in Mahabaleshwar. And this seclusion is not so well known in our Baba culture and our Baba lore, but it appears to me to have been one of the really major seclusions of Baba's life. And almost immediately upon the conclusion of the seclusion, Baba said that he was going to take a God-determined step. That phrase came up and that theme came up. And in prospect of that happening, Baba called another meeting where old life followers could attend. He had just 70 of them, and it was in Hyderabad. Hyderabad is in central India. It was Andhra Pradesh in those days. Now they've broken off into a state Telangana. There are a lot of Baba lovers from Hyderabad. I think they know the bungalow where this happened. And here, Baba declared his intention to embark on Manonash. And it was really, some of these messages are positively frightening. Baba, he was going to have to do this himself. And there, as I say, a lot of the whole work in the year preceding it, I can infer from things Baba said, were actually leading toward Manonash. And Manonash was inaugurated in a cave outside Hyderabad on 16th of October 1951. If you go to Hyderabad, this is one of the places where the group there really maintains, and they have events there. It's quite a impressive place. It's a little cave up on top of this big hill. Back in those days, it was outside of the city of Hyderabad, but now the city has grown up and there are big skyscrapers all around it. And so Baba began Manonash there, and you see a difference. Manonash was something that Baba himself was going to do. In the beginning, he was doing the New Life with his companions, and they were all trying to do it. But who else could do Manonash? Who even understands what it is, right? So Baba, he had five actually, servant companions then, who were helping him, giving an assistance, but the Manonash was being done by him. And then Baba traveled by foot or by bus with his companions up to Aurangabad. You know Aurangabad? It's not far from here. The Ellora caves are not far from it, and many other sites much associated with some of the great religions. Baba continued Manonash there. By the way, it was at this time that Baba dictated the prayer of repentance, which we say at Arti every morning. Baba dictated that prayer when he was in the state of an ordinary man, all full of weaknesses and faults and sins. So he was actually expressing what he was experiencing at that time. And then they moved from Aurangabad down to Marazad on the hill. At that time, there were 2 cabins on Marazad Hill. They'd been built 4 years earlier than that. And Baba began to do the Manonash work at Hyderabad, in Marazad there. But the conditions were disrupting his work. There was too much wind and other problems. So the cabins were disassembled and rebuilt the materials used to create the Manonash cabin at Marazad. You guys know where that is, right? People would call it Erich's room. That's Baba then finished, went through the Manonash work, and when we get to it, whenever that session comes up in this 17-session series, I found in the archival material a dictation that Baba gave about Manonash that gives a little glimpse of what it was about. And, I would always hear Baba was doing Manonash at Marazad. Okay, I believe it and everything. But I now have a better feeling for the intensity of what was going on. It was life or death with Baba, literally. I mean, he would often say, there's a very good chance I'll drop my body in the course of this. And it was absolutely crucial. And if the companions with him screwed up by making a noise, for example, it could shatter his work. So this was one of the most really crucial, decisive phases of Baba's whole life. And it seems to have culminated on January 31st. And on February 1st, everything changed. Although I hear from Daniel and others in Myrtle Beach that apparently when Baba went to Myrtle Beach, he did say there was Manonash work that he had to finish up there. Perhaps it was something connected with the West, because throughout the New Life, Baba kept trying to make plans to go to the West and live the New Life there. He wasn't just a tour of the West. He was going to live the New Life. But it didn't work out. So he wound up doing it in April of 1952. So, but the real crescendo came January, and in messages Baba gave in early February, Baba said that his Manonash work was completed to his full satisfaction, and he was, the old life had embodied, there was a phrase, perfect divinity. When they had that meeting in Mahabaleshwar on 16th of October 1950, there was a sign where there's a photo of Baba, and on one side it said, the old life, perfect divinity, divine man. And on the other side, it said, the new life, perfect humility, ordinary man. And this sign at that meeting was the first favorable reference to the old life that I've ever seen during the new life. The old life was like a dirty word. It was, Baba hated, he even said, I hate the old life. But in the last year, that began to change. And when Baba inaugurated Manonash, Baba indicated, I'm going to regain my old life Meher Baba state or die. You know, it was really, some of these messages, if we're to believe them, Baba really had a great likelihood of dying in the course of it. The work he was doing was so intense. So at the end of January, when Baba came out of that Manonash phase, he gave a message out in a circular. Throughout the new life, the sole connection between Baba and his old life followers happened through what are called the New Life Circulars. This is a edition of them published in 1967. These aren't the originals, but this is a very rare book. If you have one, don't lose it. But they were the New Life Circulars that would be sent out from Adi's office in Ahmednagar from time to time on all sorts of topics. So they're one of the most important sources, documentary sources about the New Life. But from the beginning of February, New Life Circulars ended, and instead Baba began what he called life. And what life was a combination and integration of the old life state with the new life state. As I say, perfect divinity, perfect man, combined with perfect humility, ordinary man. And those two were brought together. And we won't get into this in this series, but there was a phase that followed called life that had three subphases. The complicated free life, from March 21st to June 21st, 1952. And then that was followed by the full free life, which extended until mid-November 1952. And then the fiery free life, which is the most famous. And during this period, 1952-53, Baba started giving mass darshans all around India, and huge crowds came. And there was this mad outpouring of love for him. He was out of the new life, and he was representing himself again as God conscious and God in human form. And I haven't really found a statement where Baba said the fiery free life is ending. But it strikes me that in September 7th, 1953, Baba gave the message, the highest of the high. Are some of you acquainted with that? It's one of his truly great, one of the momentous messages of Baba's Avataric Career. And in it, Baba does not exactly say that he is the highest of the high or the avatar, but he sure as heck implies it. He keeps saying, I'm either the highest of the high or I'm an ordinary man. I'm nothing in between. You see, Baba didn't, it seems to me this is part of the new life. He didn't want all the paraphernalia and claptrap that went along with the adoration of masters. He didn't want that anymore. So he didn't want anyone to identify him as being a saint or a sadhu or a must or even a sadguru. He's either the highest of the high, here he's ordinary. Nothing in between would he countenance. But so the whole language is, if I am the highest of the high, then this. But if I'm an ordinary man, then that. The rhetoric, it's a very curious message in that way. But it doesn't leave any doubt that Baba is clearly implying that he's the highest of the high. And it was soon after that, in February of 1954, at a ecstatic bhajan session up in Hamirpur, where some of his simplest, poorest lovers were. They were mad with love and had no interest in things of the mind at all. But it was there that Baba, at a certain point, raised his hands and dictated Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. And that is usually regarded as Baba's public declaration of his avatarhood. And from then on, he began saying, I'm the Ancient One, the highest of the high, the Avatar. So if you look at the entire course of this 5-6 years, this is how I interpret it. You can make of it what you want, but it seems to me this is kind of a view that's kind of obvious. I feel all of this was part of Baba's avataric work. And that entailed that he should actually step down from that state of experiencing God in himself and really and truly become an ordinary man. Really do it. And from that state, pass through this new life, which one imagines will be a prototype for humanity or for his lovers. Again, this is interpretive, but I think many people feel this, that it somehow is setting a pattern in fundamental respects that his lovers and all humanity will adopt in the future. So he did this himself. But then at Hyderabad, he did give a discourse. Here's another characteristic of the new life. He almost never gave discourses. When he stepped into the old life for 4 hours, he took the opportunity to give a discourse. It's called Baba's Sermon, one of the great messages of Baba's Advent. But he did again at Hyderabad, explaining what Manonash is. And a lot of the point, Baba was reviewing the 3 great paths to God, Gyan Karma Bhakti, knowledge, action, and devotion. These are the 3 traditional paths in Hinduism, and Baba accepted this. It was part of his teaching also. But Baba reviewed them, and it's the most pessimistic assessment of the 3 paths that I've ever seen him give. He said these paths were mapped out, chalked out by masters in the past to try to give people some way of finding God, right? But in going through all 3 of them, he says basically they're impossible. And he explains why they're impossible. And
all the reasons that he gives, I can say, yeah, I fall for that one. Yep, I fall for that one. And there's no prospect of my ever learning to overcome those problems either. Humanity can't do it. So again, being interpretive, I feel part of what is Manonash entailed was the paths were unusable. And Baba went to the root of the problem, which is the mind, and went through the annihilation of mind to open up the paths to God again. That's how I interpret this for my own part. Having done that, he could then reestablish himself in this life that combines these two of divine man and ordinary man, and thus really become the avatar. Okay, I accept that he was the avatar from the beginning, but you see, the point is that he had lived it himself, lived through this process of being an ordinary man, and from there, as avatar, could become all of us, from really having done it himself, having gone through that himself. And then he could say, I am the Ancient One, the highest of the high, and presented himself as such to the public, had mass darshans, and in 1954 he starts dictating God Speaks. Get that title, right? Who is speaking? God is speaking. He is now God in human form. So this whole period of 5 years has a really, really pivotal place in Baba's Avataric career, it appears to me. So that's some of the broader picture that these sessions are meant to go over. Here are some of the cast of, by the way, here are some images of Baba from the New Life. This is a photo taken in Benares, Varanasi. It was the first photograph that Baba permitted. They actually hired a professional photographer, and Baba was in his begging phase there. You see him with Adi. That's Baba Das behind him. And he's coming in to the compound of Dr. Nath, N-A-T-H, who had hosted him at this time. Dr. Nath had no idea who Baba was until Baba came into contact with him during the New Life. So there's fantastic stories about this. But Baba was coming to beg at his house. I think the begging phase had been inaugurated the day before. Here's another begging moment. This is up in Dehradun. You know where Dehradun is? It's up in North India, right on the edge of the Himalayas. And Baba was headquartered there from January to May 1950 in a property called Manjri Mafi. Have any of you been to Manjri Mafi? They maintain the property still. It's I think Nashirwan was a kid then. Amrit was a little girl. I met Baba then. Her dad was there. Of course, Nashirwan's parents both. So this is actually Nashirwan's father. Baba would come up, beg for food, and the moment he would be given food, instantly Baba would go. He would never linger. So that happened here. By the way, you recognize this dude here? Erich. And this is someone named Elcha Mystery. Here's some images from, now this was during the Kumbh Mela in March, April 1950, where Baba bowed down to more than 10,000 sadhus at that event. And this was a certain moment where they came down into a room in a hotel that had been made available for the women mandali to look at the Kumbh Mela. And so Baba is bowing down. I think this is Vishnu. And is that Pindu? And that's probably Gustaji. Baba was bowing down to them. Since he was bowing down to 10,000 sadhus, why not bow down to the companions too? Here's another photo. I think that's Erich. That looks like Baidul. So you see when Baba bowed down, you get a picture of it. By the way, when he bowed down to 10,000 people over a couple of weeks, Baba was a wreck, an absolute wreck. Sometime I'm going to have to try, I won't bow down to anyone, but bow down to maybe 200 chairs or something and see how I feel at the end of it. He was absolutely, and so in his back, actually in later years, he had a lot of back problems from all the bowing down that he had done. This is a meeting at Lower Mehrabad where Baba was declaring the inauguration of the new life. This happened in the second half of August, 1949. Baba, it was a shock, announcement. And these were people who had been invited for this occasion. Here's another moment at that meeting, and these are four of his disciples who were representative of the different religions. Yes, let me mention this as another aspect of the new life. From the beginning to the end, Baba would have these, I'll call them ceremonial events. They seemed like that, where they would read prayers from some of the great religions, or read great texts or mystical texts from Sufis or Christian mystics or great Hindu masters. It was taken very, very seriously. This kept happening throughout the new life. And at the very end of the new life, as many of you will, I'm sure, already be aware, Baba had these 4 models constructed. They're still there in the 5 models. So they're still there in the where are they, in the archives building now, or in the museum? Okay. And Baba had them made by a craftsman up in Agra, and they were available. He started using them from the very beginning of Manonash, and they accompanied him throughout Manonash, so that when he was in the Manonash cabin, now Erich's room at Merazad, the models were there. And he had various other pictures on the wall and quotes on the wall. And Baba would bow down to them, and he never explained what he was doing with them. But it sure looks like it had something to do with the great world religions. Be Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Islam, those 5. So it seems like working with religion was a big part of the new life. And on January 31st, 1952, notice these dates. Baba worked with dates, and he worked with timelines, and he really took them seriously. So during this, on January 31st, he had been having dunis throughout the month, as a matter of fact, at Merazad. And they did have the last of these dunis occurred that night. There was so much going on in the Manonash period. Very few people were allowed in, but those who did had definite roles to play. But they were all to attend, and Baba had dictated to Erich, who wrote down on a piece of paper something like this: all the rites, rituals, and ceremonies of the religions of the world are hereby consumed into ash. And during the Duni, Baba had Erich pull out this piece of paper, read it, and throw it into the Duni. And the next morning, Baba had them collect that Duni ash and put it into these tins. And Baba said, never open these tins, never use them or open them. The women Mandali later on hadn't heard this instruction, so they saw them and said, what's this? And they opened it, but then they got told what it was. So these tins are also being kept in the museum, or is there in somewhere in archives. Baba said, always keep this. So that also is a huge part of the new life, working with religious. I don't know, it's not just religious, like he would read like The Cloud of Unknowing, a great mystical treatise in early English, or, things like that. It was a great mystical literature also. And they would recite it. When Baba was in the 100-day seclusion, every evening they would do this. So this was an episode right from the beginning where they were doing that very thing. Here is that Ghani? I can't quite see. And that's Baba Das, and he's putting his hand on one of the scriptures. They would read from I think on that occasion there was reading from the Quran and the Gita. Here are some of the characters, some of the personalities. Not all of them were in the New Life, but most of them were. So this is Anna 104. He was the New Life companion. This is Murli. He was one of the youngest. He had been a Meher Ashram, I think maybe Prema Ashram boy. His dad, Kalamama, was one of Baba's Mandali. Baijul, who's one of the New Life companions. Erich, that's Chuggin. He wasn't in the New Life. That is, I think, Minu Karas. He wasn't on the New Life. He almost joined Baba during the Manonash period, but he fell sick. There's Adi Kiarani. He was the New Life companion. Faram Working Boxwala. He stayed back in Ahmednagar, but was a tremendous worker. So, some of you must have met him. He was there in the 70s. Erich said one time he was the hardest worker that Erich ever met in his whole life. This Dr. Nilu, Jal, Baba's brother, he wasn't a New Life companion, but he did come in at a number of times during the New Life for various functions. Kakabaria, this is Adi, Baba's brother. He wasn't on the New Life. Gustaji, this is, of course, Meher Baba. And Sidhu, he was still alive in the 70s. Ramju Abdullah, there were at the original meetings in August 1949, there were 3 categories: yes wallas, no wallas, and arrangement wallas. You had to, if you were invited to these meetings, and not many were, and you had to say yes or no. And if you didn't choose one or the other, your connection with Baba was broken forever. Go. You couldn't vacillate or equivocate. But there were 5 arrangement wallas who managed various things. He was one of them. We'll see the others in a minute. This is Savak Kotwal, isn't it? Let me see. And here's Baba Das. He was one of the New Life companions. These are all one photo. It's broken into 2 parts. Pendu, he was on the New Life in the corner there. This is Sailor. Kodu is his name. He was a very early disciple. Duncan was the one Westerner who joined the New Life, Britisher. Padri, here's Kalamama, father of Murli, one of the I think he was from this area, one of the very early disciples. And Datu Mehendargi, he was actually one of the Meher Ashram boys in the 1920s, and he worked for Adi, and a lot of the circulars were managed by him, the New Life circulars, which I mentioned. Here's Dr. Ghani, he was New Life companion. Here's Nariman, Sarosh, and Merji, and these were arrangement wallas also. The 4th is not in this photo. Jal Karawala, he was the 5th arrangement walla. Here's Kaksab. He wasn't on the New Life, but was a very early disciple of Baba's from the Manjali Meme period. And Savak Damania, Dake Falkar, yeah. He wasn't in the New Life, although he attended the meeting at Hyderabad. Alaba, who was a New Life companion. Bal Tambat, and I really don't know who he is. and here's Vishnu. So you see here a lot of the New Life companions and a few others. All of these people were connected with the New Life. Here are the 5 arrangement wallas. Nariman, Sarosh, Merji, here's Jal Karawala. Jal Karawala died just after the end of the New Life in late 1952, and Ramju Abdullah. So let me see. Here are some noteworthy messages connected with the New Life. By the way, in this book, The Tales of the New Life, was published back in the 1970s, and it got republished in a new edition. It's available again. It's after the New Life. It was in the 70s that Don Stevens interviewed Erich and Mani and Mera and Miru. Rano was there too. And so it's conversations with them. But it's really quite a wonderful book. It's been very much loved by many people. Anyway, in the new edition, there's this timeline, which you might find to be helpful. This goes through the major periods. I'll go through them real quickly. 22nd June to 31st July was the Great Seclusion. Baba had not yet mentioned the New Life coming, but it's widely felt that this was preparation for it. 15th to 31st August, Baba had these meetings at Mehrabad. You know, down in Mandali Hall at Mehrabad, now if you're non-Indian and you go there, they'll throw you straight to prison. Joking, just joking. But that's one of, it had just been completed the year before, just been built the year before. That's where those meetings were. On 16th of October, Baba set off from the level crossing at Ahmednagar, Nagar, isn't that the name of it now? That's where they met, and that's where the New Life began. And then the 20th of October to the 12th of November, the training period happened in Belgaum. That's south of here, I don't know, 500 kilometers south of here. In Karnataka, I think. That's what Dr. Ghani composed the Song of the New Life there. Then from the 15th to the 31st of November, Baba and his companions all shifted up to Benares. You know, that's a very holy city where these ghats are. Then for the 1st to the 12th of December, they moved to Sarnath, which is only maybe, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 miles away, associated with Buddha, a very great shrine there of connected with Buddha that Baba worked with. Then from the 12th of November to the 12th of January, Baba, with his companions, engaged in the gypsy life, where they traveled from Sarnath all across up to the northwest to Dehradun, which is north of Delhi. It's right on the edge of the mountains. They went by gypsy life, but most of it, the train took them. It would have taken them 9 months if they had gone by the whole caravan with the whole menagerie of animals. But that's where the gypsy life happened. And then from the 12th of January up through late May, Baba was headquartered up in North India. The main place was Manjri Mafi, which is on the edge of Dehradun. And the women were staying there most of the time. But Baba himself, in March and April, shifted about 40, 50 miles to the edge of Haridwar, you know, Rishikesh. It's 40, 50 miles from Dehradun. Is that the distance? I've never been there myself. Huh? 30 kilometers, that's all. But Baba had a little hut there close to Haridwar, which is, you know, Haridwar to Rishikesh is 10, 15 kilometers. where many, many ashrams are. And the Kumbh Mela, I was reading in the internet that forget the numbers, 200, 300 million people went to the 2018 Kumbh Mela, and in one day, 30 million people were there. So it's like maybe the biggest gathering in the entire world. So there weren't that many in this year, but there are a lot. So it was quite an event. And what Baba did was he just bowed down to one sadhu after another, day after day. But then in late May, Baba shifted to Delhi, and there was a big flare-up where Baba really expressed dissatisfaction with the way the new life was being led. And with a bunch of losers like that, how would you expect otherwise? Erich, Gustaji, Baijul, Kaka, this is the A-team. And they weren't able to do it. They couldn't do it. We'll come to that in due course. They weren't really getting what the new life was about, is what Baba seemed to be saying. So he dissolved everything and put them into the labor phase, and they implemented it by starting a business, the ghee business. Some of you may have heard about the New Life ghee business. It was a business failure, and it got shut down after 2 weeks because it turned out that they were making real high-quality ghee, and all the ghee in the market was adulterated, so they couldn't sell at prices where anyone would buy it. Perfect time to start a ghee business in Delhi. Delhi in the summer, May, right, is a lot hotter than here. So they have big cauldrons and fires and... So this is... Again, this is the new life, but then Baba shut it down and then moved south to Satara. Baba spent a lot of time in Satara over the years. He had before this, and they had a bungalow there. Baba was there for a couple months, and I'll just skip over this. It was one of the quieter parts of the new life. And on the 16th of October, Baba had this major meeting, and between late October and January 1951, Baba was traveling all over the place. You hear about Baba's traveling, but when you really read the accounts of it, it was exhausting. It was just, and his work was to contact musts and poor people, particularly people who had been wealthy and fallen into complete destitution. And there were just heartbreaking stories about the work he did. He went up to Nepal, down to near Madras. He was in Madras, over to Bombay and Madhya Pradesh, and over to Hyderabad. I mean, he was traveling all over the place in the course of this work over 3-4 months. Then in February to May, Baba carried out the 100-day seclusion that I mentioned. That was just one of the most devastating seclusions on his health. He was really a wreck at the end of it. But immediately he arranged for this meeting at Hyderabad. So these are some of the highlights, or not just highlights, phases of the new life, where he called old life followers and he announced the inauguration of Manonash. This is an overview of the whole thing. July through October, they were making preparations for Manonash, and then it began in real earnest on the 16th of October in a cave, which you can still visit outside of Hyderabad. There were only 5 of them: Erich, Gustaji, Pindu, Baijul, and Daulat Singh. Daulat Singh was back. And then they traveled from there by foot or by bus up to Aurangabad, which they reached in November, And for about 2 weeks, Baba was doing his Manonash work in Aurangabad. Then they went to the hill, Seclusion Hill, outside Merazad, where the 2 cabins were. And for about 3 weeks, Baba was there. And then the last phase of it was down in Merazad proper. The women were on the women's side. Baba would see Mera and Mani from time to time, but no one else got to see him. You know, to give an idea of Manonash, Baba gave an analogy that's made an impression on me. It's a long dictation, and the gist of it to the companions is keep quiet, right? He gave 6 or 7 pages to these tried companions, really impressing on them why it mattered that they should keep quiet. And he said, imagine a soldier in a desperate war struggle where he's fighting against enemies and they're trying to kill him. And in the middle of the most intense battle, a bee starts to buzz around his ear, and he loses his concentration, and at that moment they kill him. Baba said, when you make noise, it's like that. It has that effect. It could destroy me and destroy Manonash. And on the 6th of February, Baba gave out the first of his life circulars. So I'll finish by just reading some of the interesting, notable passages. I want to call your attention to this. Any of you who may be spiritual trainees or otherwise are interested in the trust, this is from the trust deed. And you see all these purposes and goals. So here, the first one, for the training of persons, this is spiritual training, for the training of persons according to the life, particularly what was called the new life, lived by Avatar Meher Baba and his companions, exemplifying and practicing at all times renunciation and detachment in the midst of the ordinary worldly activities, that is, to be in the world and not of it. So the very first of these brings up the new life as the foundation for spiritual training here at the Trust. This is a very famous message, which I'd like to read, because this appeared in a New Life circular, 10th of March, 1950. Baba gave very few general messages during the New Life because he wasn't God and he didn't know anything. He would give out instructions to his companions pertinent to what they were doing then. For example, he would give out conditions of begging, let's say, things like that. But he didn't profess to have any spiritual knowledge. So this doesn't profess to spiritual knowledge either, but it's quite a magnificent statement of what the new life is. Okay, although this new life has emerged from me, I'm not at all bound by it. Plans 1, 2, and 3 of the new life, we'll get to that in a later session. With their 4 phases of labor, begging, gypsy, and Lingoti life, will function as long as I am physically alive. But this new life is endless. Even after my physical death, it will be kept alive by those who live the life of complete renunciation of falsehoods, lies, hatred, anger, greed, and lust, and who, to accomplish all this, do no lustful actions, do no harm to anyone, do no backbiting, do not seek material possessions or power, and who accept no homage, neither covet honor nor shun disgrace, and fear no one and nothing. By those who rely wholly and solely on God, and who love God purely for the sake of loving, who believe in the lovers of God and in the reality of manifestation, and yet do not expect any spiritual or material reward, and who do not let go the hand of truth, and who, without being upset by calamities, bravely and wholeheartedly face all hardships with 100% cheerfulness, and give no importance to caste, creed, and religious ceremonies. This new life will live by itself eternally, even if there is no one to live it. One of the great sentences of all time, in my opinion. And one thing that I note about this message and many of Baba's other New Life messages, it's almost entirely negative. You don't do this and you don't do that. And the New Life conditions are like that too. And when we get to them in due course. But I remember vividly Erich and Mani talking about the New Life. And that is not what the New Life was. It was freedom. It was a life of pure freedom. And how I understand a lot of these messages about the New Life is this is the framework. This is the scaffolding that makes the New Life possible. But what the New Life really was cannot be expressed in words. It was an experience where, I remember Erich one time trying to tell us what the New Life was like, and he had taken us to Happy Valley outside, not far from Merzad, and he was saying, I can't tell you how free we were. Like right now, Erich was saying, I have to, think about getting you back onto the bus and taking you back to Merzad, and you'll have to, you'll get in your rickshaws, and then I have to eat dinner and go to bed and think about tomorrow. In the New Life, there was nothing. None of that was there. Yeah, there would be plans. They knew what they were doing, but they were not thinking about the past and the future at all. They were really free. It was a life of real freedom. Everybody talks about freedom. Well, this was the real thing. Here's that original message as it was originally published in a circular that went out at that time. Here's another really important statement of the New Life, and we won't read it now, but this is the song of the New Life. This is the translation into English this is the original that was published. It's a bit faded out as you're looking at it. It's much clearer on my screen. But they printed it. Baba had it written by Dr. Abdul Ghani, and they had it printed and circulated at a time where almost no one had any contact with Baba. But they did see this. By the way, Baba told Ghani he had to write it by such and such a time, and if he didn't do it satisfactorily, Baba would make him do 100 sit-ups. Ghani was world-class lazy. So this is an example. And then he had to write another stanza at the very end, and if he didn't finish it by the next morning, he would have to do another 100 sit-ups to give a little bit of the, the humor of the New Life, right? This is the English translation, and this is actually the original Urdu that Ghani wrote. It's very beautiful song. And the other thing I want to, I guess, a last item I wanted to read. This was a little, I don't know, somehow this hits the spot with me. Baba dictated this and had them recited every day. And so, old life guzari kaisi kaisi, aj bhi guzari jaisi vaisi, kal ke guzarne ki aisi taisi. Now it's kind of untranslatable, but it's funny, isn't it? It's very funny. It's so idiomatic, but how do you the old life passed away? How do you say kaisi kaisi? Like this, like that. Somehow. Ajbi, today also passes away. Jaisi vaisi. Can anyone translate Jaisi vaisi for me? Anyhow. Passed away anyhow, yeah. And kal ke guzarne ki aisi taisi. Tomorrow also will pass away. Huh? Be damned, yeah. actually, this expresses the spirit of the new life very well. It's quite funny, but it's sort of like, we don't care about any of these things, you know. Although they had to be extremely practical and extremely responsible and obey orders. But the inner essence of it was completely free. I mean, think about your own life. I don't know if your life, it's just full of garbage all the time. You know, I'm constantly fretting about this or about that, or, you know, stupid little things. Well, in the new life, all of that was clear. You couldn't stay in the new life if you let yourself get caught up on that. So anyway, that's the main overview that I'll be giving this time. And now let me also mention that these are going to be up on YouTube. There's a Trust channel, YouTube channel, and I've created this, there's a syllabus actually for all the 17, we probably won't keep to the schedule, but next week will be at 10 in the morning, and then there'll be a lapse the February 10th, February 17th, and all these topics are described here. August meetings, training in labor at Belgaum, the Benares interlude, and also how would they find the study guide? Through the description of the YouTube. Okay, in the YouTube, for anyone who wants to dig deeper, I created this I did a 9-day program at Marana, but this is an adaptation. This gives for each session a real description of what topics will be covered, and most of them will have also these like study questions too, which is just to provoke questions about these things. Where is Mount Abu? So forth. This is the major stages of the Great Seclusion, et cetera, et cetera. So this is about 25 pages. So anybody who wants to have a preview of what's upcoming for the next week, and this will be up there. Okay, any of you want to raise any questions at this point? Yeah.
Four phases out of that, Bhakti was saying that Baba has left us only one.
The labor phase. Yeah, Bao felt, well, it is true that during the new life, they had a brief gypsy phase of about 3 weeks, and they had moments of begging. They did a fair bit of that. And the Langodi phase they did only once. Baba himself did it somewhere else. It looks like Langodi means meditation. In a Langodi where you're engaged in some kind of meditation. A loincloth, yeah. They did this in Sarnath. And Baba seems to have said to most of the companions, for you, the labor phase is your job, and I'll do the other 3 myself. So Bao interpreted that as being the paradigm for the future. I myself think that all of these are going to come up in the future, that people will wind up doing them. You know, we may have people who come along and say, you old farts, you talk about Baba and don't do a darn thing. We're going to do the gypsy phase. We're going to get in our caravan with our camel and white horse and donkeys, and we're going to do it. You know, it may sound funny now, but look at someone like St. Francis. They all talked about the apostolic life, and St. Francis did it. So I think I personally feel that in the future, all of this is going to happen. But I don't know, maybe we should have a Langodi day at Mirabad. Everyone has to dress in Langodi if they want to go to RT. Huh?
Did Baba say, we have already done this 3 phases, in the Langoti, the baking and the gypsy phase, and this labor phase is what I have left for you to do.
Well, I don't see where Baba said that as a generality for all posterity.
he did say that during the new life, he said, and this stage, we're doing the labor phase and I'm doing the other three. I don't see anything where Baba said this is going to be true for all posterity. But this is something where people can, make up their own minds on the matter. Yeah.
Two things. One is, Val gets in the spiritual training program booklet, he does actually orient the spiritual training program around the labor.
Yes.
So there is that.
Yeah.
There is that Val's interpretation.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a different question, though. In the New Life Statement, where he says those. In the New Life Statement, Baba talks about those who believe in the lovers of God and in the reality of manifestation. How do you interpret the reality of manifestation there?
I really don't have an answer to that. Baba used the word manifestation again and many times, but he never really defined what it was. So I don't actually know. But I associate those lines, particularly the first one, the lovers of God, with the last stanza of the Song of the New Life. Because Baba liked it. It's really a wonderful poem. But Baba, the next day, said, I'm concerned that people will think this is an endorsement of atheism or communism or something like that, and it's not. So he had Ghani write a last stanza, and the last stanza is something like this. God exists, and true are the prophets. Every moment has its wali, something like that. But for us, there is only hopelessness and helplessness. How else can I tell you what the new life is? So I think of that as the affirm the lovers of God and believe in them. Yeah.
Let me offer an
Yeah.
interpretation of that, because I've given that some thought.
Yeah.
And also in the statement there, he capitalizes manifestation. So I've thought that perhaps that means that for those who believe in the reality that a human being can actually manifest as God.
Right. It could well
That's
mean
how I
that.
interpreted that.
Where God manifests before your eyes and you become one with God. Yeah, that's a good way of understanding that, yeah. Anybody else? Or bring up anything? Okay, well, thank you very much. So the next one will be next Monday at 10 in the morning, and it's going to be on the lead up to the August meetings, particularly the Great Seclusion. I might get into the August meetings a little bit. Okay, Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.